world headquarters of common sense.
Talk Radio.
Labour has today called for the UK's Homes for Ukraine plan, or has called it a DIY asylum scheme, with the shadow levelling up secretary Lisa Nandy asking whether ministers expect refugees to get onto Instagram and advertise themselves for potential sponsors. She says, how's it going to work? Delighted to be joined now by Shadow Attorney General Emily Thornberry on Talk Drive. Emily, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Jeremy.
What do you mean a DIY asylum scheme? I have to say before you answer that, actually, I was out and about today filming and people were saying that the sentiment's great. They're not too sure about the detail. What's missing in Labour's view?
Well, that's kind of it, isn't it? So there's a lot of talk about you making sure that people offer, and that's fantastic. And of course, the British public have stepped up because that's what the British public are like. And you just heard there's like 100,000 people have put forward, their homes. But you need to have both sides of the bargain. So we also need to have Ukrainians to match with homes. So it's kind of easier if you've got friends or family who are Ukrainian. Then I can see how that might work. And I think on Friday we will see what these forms look like and what it is that's expected on both sides. But we don't know. And then what if you don't know? What if you don't know any Ukrainians and you don't have any friends who are Ukrainian, but you've got a spare room, you want to put it forward? How is that going to be matched up? And that we don't have any answers to. So are we really supposed to go out and find a Ukrainian, or a Ukrainian is supposed to go out and find us? Which is why Lisa was saying, what do? Put yourself on Instagram? I mean, it's like, how does this work?
Is this another example, in Labour's view, of the Tories jumping in on something that's right and proper, but actually there isn't enough detail and people don't understand how to go about it? You're not disagreeing with the sentiment. What you're saying is this needs to be simple. We have Rob Rinder from Talk Radio out on the Polish-Ukraine border, and he's saying that every other country seems to have got this right and we're stuck in a bureaucratic red tape nightmare that's embarrassing on the world stage, to be honest, in the middle of a humanitarian disaster.
I think Rob's going even further, isn't he? And he's got photographs on Twitter of tables with flags above, and all of these countries from all over the place, including Japan, they're welcoming people from Ukraine when they get off the train in Poland. And where are we? We're not there. We're still falling over ourselves, just trying to set up a kind of a basic.
But what do you say to the other side of the argument, Emily, that vetting, there has to be some form of vetting? That how would it look if indeed at the end of the day it was just the doors were open and it was as simple as that, and things happened that were wrong? These are people who could be heavily mentally traumatised, people who have been through terrible situations. There is some need for some sort of control, if you like, or organisation, surely, but just maybe quicker, right?
Well, look, yes. I mean, yes to all of that, Jeremy. But, the point is that that's not what the government's been doing. So the government started off by saying, well, you remember, we can use the system that we currently have. So if you have very close family or you want to come and pick fruit, then of course you can come to Britain. That's what they said to begin with. And then, they realized that people were horrified and disgusted by that. So then they went, oh, well, maybe a bit more members of your family, maybe your sister, maybe this. And then now they've done this big leap and they're saying, okay, you can sponsor, put forward, if you've got any space, then, but we still have got this big gap in the system. And in the meantime, other countries across Europe are taking in hundreds of thousands of refugees. And how many have we taken in? We're just not doing our bit. And it's because the government hasn't got its act together. Now, I really hope that they finally will. And as I say, the British public have certainly stepped up. So what we need now is for the government to step up and set up a system that makes some sense. Well, I mean, what we've always said is that people should come over to this country. We suspect it will only be friends and family of Ukrainians who are here already, because other Ukrainians are likely to want to stay closer to Ukraine. But, and then once they were here, then to make sure that that we could do a security check on them, and also so that we could make sure that because they're likely to be vulnerable. It's women and children and elderly people. We need to make sure that they are being looked after properly. We know where they are. Are the children definitely the children of the adults who are trapping?
That does take time, though, doesn't it? That does take time.
You can check people when they're in. That's what we say. We say.
And what do you do what if they're in and you check them and there's problems? What do you do then? Deport them?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what you have to do. I mean, I think you have to be kind of, ready to do a security check. And if they are, if this woman is being trafficked, then she's being trafficked, and you deal with that. If these kids do not belong to these adults, if these elderly people are, we don't know where they're going to. They say they've got family here. They don't seem to. Then you need to, you need to deal with the situation.
I'm asked
to keep people in the snow in Poland, and for the British not to have even any information centres, not to have any help desks, not to have, volunteers, members of the Home Office, members of the armed services there to say, okay, you want to come to the UK? Let's talk about it. Where do you want to go? How's it going to work? Let us help you.
Firstly, the one thing I like about you is you're always able to take the questions that people want to put to you. Surely it was Emily Thornberry's fault for filling up the country with so many economic migrants in the first place, so there's no space left for Ukrainians, and the governments are having to say, open up your homes. Your response to that, Emily Thornberry?
I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, I know that we've got two.
Not me. I'm just giving you a text.
Okay, so there's two hotels full of Afghans in my constituency.
Yes.
And there's a resettlement scheme, but we don't really have the assistance from the government to give people a permanent place. And obviously, that is in my constituency. It is an issue. The local authorities doing everything they can to support these Afghans, and these Afghans are people who helped the British when we were in Afghanistan. It would be unsafe for them to remain in Afghanistan. So, my local authority is already kind of dealing with that. We've had the Hong Kong resettlement scheme, which seems to have gone really well. So, these are the different schemes that have happened. But what you need to have is a tailored scheme for each of these crises and manifest. It's obvious the government didn't have one. It's as if this whole thing took them by surprise.
I guess what it is, Em, is people would say, just to, because it's important to get both sides. This from Mary. Imagine how many real refugees the UK could take had the left and the whole of Europe not been encouraging false refugees, this is what they're saying, to come to our shores for the last 2 decades. Surely now, and I think this is a really relevant point, when you look at the humanitarian disaster unfolding, none of us can be moved to not think this is like World War II. This is awful, right? This is awful. Have we been too lenient in the past? Or do you think, Emily Thornberry, that actually what's going on in Ukraine will finally change people's mindsets and say, do you know what? There is a world of difference, isn't there, between sitting in the United Kingdom. But there are many people who have approached us today and said, I really care about it and it breaks my heart, but I can't afford to heat my home.
So I think that if we look at the facts in relation to people who claim refugee status in the UK, you look at the number of people who, when they appeal, the vast majority win their appeals. So whilst people might be cynical about, are you sure you're a refugee? Why are you claiming refugee? You're an asylum seeker. I mean, the idea of being an asylum seeker is somehow or other that you're pulling a fast one. But if you look at the number of people going through the courts and winning their cases, actually the vast majority do win their cases. I just wish that it was dealt with faster and that we were fairer about, I think we should have a system which is fast and fair and firm. I think we need to, as people come in and claim asylum, we need to deal with their case quickly and properly. They need to be properly represented. We need to make a decision. And frankly, if they're not a legitimate asylum seeker, we should chuck them out. I mean, that's what I think we should do. But I think that to be honest, the Home Office is not fit for purpose. It doesn't do its job properly. And you get people languishing here for years without there being a proper decision being made. So that's kind of, for me, that's the biggest issue.
You're like me, you would imagine and believe that the idea is quite right, the sentiment is correct, but there needs to be more detail. But perhaps the most wonderful thing of the last 24 hours is seeing the outpouring of support from the British people.
Yes.
I think it's really important to be honest, and people will say, yes, I can, no, I can't. I think we've known each other a long time, so you won't mind me asking you this, because I've had myself stripped today. It was published in 2019 that you've got 3 houses. Are you going to open up one of them to Ukrainian refugees, Emily Thornberry?
I've got my late mother. I bought a home for, so that she could move out of the council house that we were brought up in, so that it could be released back to the council. And I helped my brother with somewhere to live. So I have a house that I control, which is mine. And yeah, I mean, if it's needed, then of course we'll do our bit, and of course we will put ourselves forward to give someone somewhere to live from Ukraine. Yes,
I think.
But as I say, I think that the need is likely to be that people will be coming from the Ukraine into the UK because they'll want to be with friends or family.
No, I agree with that. And I think also the relevant point is this. Rob was saying on the border yesterday, a lot of people do not want to be that far from Ukraine because they want to get back to their country and to their cities as soon as possible. But I was asked the question, I'm asking everybody that came on today, and they said, oh, you've got a big, whatever. I've got 5 kids. It's not possible. But I genuinely think, and I also rail against, I have to say this, if people say, no, my house isn't big enough, or I don't think it would fit in socially with my kids or my pets, or I'm a carer for an old person, you shouldn't be vilified for saying that at all.
No, I agree with you, of course.
I think that all of us would want to. It's the virtue signalling I've got a problem with, Emily. Do you know what I mean? The people, all those celebrities that come out and go, oh, yes, and, and then they don't. I think, and, if you can, brilliant. If you can't as well, but really appreciate it. But
at this stage, we just don't know what the government's going to do. So I think it's brilliant that all these people have put their names forward.
100,000.
But, what's the government going to do on the government side? That's the thing.
Good talk.
Hot talk. Bold talk. Talk radio.
Listen on your smart speaker.
Watch it live on your smart TV.
The world headquarters of common sense.
Talk Radio.